Ooh, ooh, ooh. WDBFradio.com. WDBFradio.com.
Steve the Bookman Eisenstein.
Good morning, my fellow rare bookians, and welcome to Books on the Bookshelf. We are live and back in the saddle in the studio again. I can't thank all of you enough. I can't express the words for the tremendous support that you sent my way over the last few weeks. Bottom line is, I still don't know WTF is wrong with me. 4 times I was sent 4 times to different places for what was supposed to be an open MRI in each place. They said they had an open MRI, and each time they were tubes. So I, used to go caving. I seriously, unbelievably can't figure out why I'm claustrophobic, but the bottom line is I am. So now what I have to do Monday is go find a new doctor. That's the bottom line. They put me in a freezing cold waiting room for 2 hours on the last one, and there was no way that it was going to work. So we'll keep you posted. At least I know I'm not pregnant. Whoa, what am I doing here? I lost my page. Sorry about that. You get out of practice, you get sloppy. I was really touched by the support, is what I guess I'm trying to, not guess, what I know I'm trying to say. But for the rest of the show, let's talk book talk and only book talk. So here we go. And we have 2 perfect guests to do that with. ErikLehmkuhl has been a featured guest on Porn Stars Does America, which kind of reminds me of Debbie Does Dallas, Denver, and Detroit, but not really. And is just an amazing, multifaceted collector, expert in different areas. We will have Erik on at 10:26. Just an amazing guy. Max Ruback will join us for our second Saturday of the month book talks. He's going to check in a little late today at 11:30, but you can check out Max at commongroundfinds.com. That's one word, commongroundfinds.com, or his YouTube shows titled Paper Gold, his videos. Max has an amazing and unique business model. What he is doing for us has been mutually, financially rewarding. What else can you ask out of a book deal? We have about 5,000 books in my warehouse going down. The high-end books, we're going to keep to do the show in March, but that still leaves a lot of very good to better, what I call shelf stock. And what do I define shelf stock as? I don't know, books in the $25 to $300 range, that kind of stuff. That's all going to Max. And as we downsize, I will tell you, it starts to get expensive. I never thought of it this way, but I probably could have bought a house with what I've paid for rent at different storage places. We've got right now, I think it's a 15 by 20, it's $685 a month. I hope in the next 2 months to be down to a 10 by 10, which should hold the fixtures for book shows and enough inventory to do a few. And that's not to say we're not buying anymore, but very selectively. If you are in a similar situation and you're thinking about downsizing, and I'm saying it, I said this on the show for years, even before it was even a thought in my own mind, you've got to prepare your heirs. You've got to prepare people for, what do I do with all this stuff, especially if the family's not into it. So, when you get to a certain point, you got to do something. You got to make a plan. You've got to leave detailed information. You've got to leave instructions on what they should do. Even if you have people that you know you can trust to help them, recommend them, make a list. It will be to everyone's advantage if you do. And this was not easy for me. I'm not retiring, I'm downsizing. But you've got to figure out at a certain point that if you don't have people in your family, we do, but if you don't have people in your family, you want to leave instructions. That's the best way I can say it. And since that's kind of dark, I'm going to get out of it. Okay. But, leave instructions for what should be done with your stuff. A lot's been going on in the multifaceted markets we all work in. So the following is kind of an ad lib, loose recap of market events, along with some tips on the subject. If you have these things. Photography, it's always a collectible subject. The main money, I mean, maybe I'm saying that a little tight, but the main money in photography is in the original images. Christie's had an auction, I think a week ago or so. They sold $3.6 million worth of photographs. Ansel Adams, for example, 330,200 for one, 190,000 for another. There's a lot of people. We know this from an experience we had on one of our summer drives out west. We were in New Mexico, and of course, there's a million jewelry stores and tourist things outside the national parks and things. And I know we went into one and we were talking to some jewelry maker because Edie really liked what he was doing. And behind him was a big photograph of what was his grandmother. And the photograph looked really interesting. I had a feeling it was going to be an Ansel Adams or something like that. So I asked him, by any chance, do you know where? Does anyone have that photograph of your grandmother? And he said, yeah. And he said something about they go up the mountain in the winter or down the mountain in the winter. It was we were on the ground. I guess it was up in the, whatever they call it, on top of the plateau that was there on the mountain that had a plateau. And I told him, something like that, could, pay for your college, your daughter's college or something like that. So you never know what images you have. I'm not saying you're going to have a $300,000 Ansel Adam image, but don't take old photographs for granted. Most of them, like the CDVs and things like that you see in antique stores, to put it in proper perspective, I once read the most interesting caption about one of those, and what they said was adopt a family. Make your own fake family out of these images. The other thing that you want to look at for those particular images, the CDVs and things like that, most importantly, is who's in the image. But it might be mom and pop, or somebody's aunt and uncle or something like that, or subject matter. But what's really important, even if it is a mom and pop image, is who the photographer was, and those are usually, stamped on the back, on the front, so there's a way to identify who the photographer was. Just food for thought on photography. Of course, photography books by the major photographers, Adams, Weston, Strand, Steichen, Cartier-Bresson. I could go on and on. Yeah, you're looking for those original first editions in dust jackets. So we're talking about auctions and things. Last week, around the world in auctions, 43 million. To give it perspective here, I don't know if any of you ever really thought about that if you're not in the business or you're new to it. At the time, all the auctions recorded last week by Rare Book Hub, which is probably every auction house in the world, totaled $43,805,204.90. The average lot was $3,198.39. Gives you a little perspective, the top lot sold for $2.8 million, and that was lot number one. Lot number 25 in the top 25 sold for $279,400. Now, if you like these kind of statistics and the auctions that produce them and other going-ons in the trade these days, there's something that you should do, and it's free. Subscribe to the RareBookHub.com newsletter. It is a phenomenal read. While I often say that fine books in collection, the magazine, online or hardcover, replace the AB, what Rare Book Hub does in their newsletter, to me, the information that I want to know, what I want to stay abreast of in, let's say, not 2,500 word articles, the way it's presented. I'm a fast reader, so, I want a lot and quick and without having to click. The Rare Book Hub newsletter is phenomenal. I use it more than I do the Rare Book Hub magazine. Their articles tend to get more scholarly and a deeper dive sometimes than you or I might want to go, but Rare Book Hub is just phenomenal. The other thing that you want to know about the Rare Book Hub, if you're new, is this. When we price books, generally speaking, if you don't know about auctions and the Rare Book Hub and auction prices, but you know where to go to price books, you're only doing half your job. When you go to Via Libre, when you go to AddAll, when you go to Biblio, Abe, pick your favorite, they all have one thing in common. Whatever price they listed was an asking price. And that's all you know from that price. They asked that. Did they get it? Is the book still on the shelf after 10 years? Did they sell it for less? Did they sell it to a dealer and, they gave them a 20% dealer discount, etc.? So what you have to fine tune, just to stay with that for another minute or two, you have to fine tune whose prices you're going to use as your comparison to your copy. Many times when you see a listing of a popular art book or something like that with lithographs, you're going to see three kind of parameters. You're going to see somebody that puts it up at $5,000, $7,000. You're going to see a middle range grouping of more dealers that are putting at a realistic price dependent on the condition and their knowledge of the market. And then you're going to see some people that either don't know what they're doing or, at really low end prices. If it's too low, watch out for scams. But, so you don't know if any of those books sold or if they sold at the prices they asked. When you go to Rare Book Hub, you know that what you're looking at are actual sold prices. As an appraiser, I will use dealer comparisons, but I prefer the fact of auction, which is what you're trying to present to your client. Fact, that's in the appraisal. So that's just a little ramble on that. This is just a fun thing. We see stories on it all the time, and all of us do. Even if you're not in the book business, you see it in a local newspaper from time to time. I'm going to ask this as a trivia contest question. What is the longest time that you ever heard about that a book was returned to a library? The Rare Book Hub had a story on it this week that said 82 years later, this book was returned. I know I have heard stuff into the 1880s. I mean, that 82 years, you could probably add, another, what would 82 years ago be? Help me out here. 2025 would be 25 minus another, yeah, no, 1870s, 1880s I've heard of. I don't think it goes back that far. It would be, yeah, 1924 ish, something like that. It's 1930-ish. That's not that old. So does anybody know, is there a Guinness Book of Record number for what the library book that had the record for being returned the latest? Novel story from time to time. Okay. Um, you guys know that my second favorite collectible in the world is firearms, edged weapons, man cave toys, things like that. So I have often mentioned the antique end of it on this program, and the way I would address it was, if you have a house that has a fireplace or a wall that has some wall hangers hanging on it or over the fireplace, and one of them or two of them happens to be a sword, and a couple might be, rifles, whether they're black powder, or, whatever they might be. Or in what I always hope for is you find a Krieghoff African big game rifle that your uncle or whoever's gun it was got from the Maharishi Swanishi in India in 1890. Talking about a six-figure gun there, even though I'm making it up. What I've been finding out lately, because I'm doing some research projects, is while we've talked about them, and I still say the same thing. Some of them can be exceptionally rare. They could have been hanging on your walls for generations, and you never realized it was the golden ticket. Other things like old bullet boards, not the modern reproductions, are very, very collectible. But we've often talked about those edged weapons. Recently, I've had to work on a collection of more modern firearms, after 1898. What I am finding out is this. Some of the 1980s Colt Smiths are really going up in value. If you happen to have one and it's not the home defense weapon, or it's just gathering dust in a drawer, hopefully in the original box with the papers, you might want to check it out. You might be very surprised about some of the values of them. So that's just food for thought in terms of what you might have laying around that, you might not realize. So very shortly, we're going to be joined by ErikLehmkuhl. Erik is a dynamo, a wealth, an encyclopedic person that can just really help you find out what you're looking at and looking for. Like I said, he was a featured guest, not just on the Porn Star show, but it was Porn Stars Around America. And he was in several episodes. He lectures, he appraises, he does all of that with American and other artifacts. If I remember it right, I also saw some mineral samples and meteor samples, specimens, as well as, I think we were talking about T-Rex and other things last time. So we are going to have a very fun time with Erik when we come back. And later on in the program, Max is going to pick it up. I can't thank Max enough. I woke up this morning to find out that Max sent me a note that he said, I just sold one of your books for $425. Thank you very much, Max. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That's all I can say. And on that note, We'll be back after these commercial words. Bucks on the Bookshelf. It is October 11th. It is 10:25 a.m. and we are back in the studio again. And we would love to hear from our listeners. You know, if you guys want to make me a happy DJ, so to speak, give us a call. The call-in number is 888-575-4394. That's 888-575-4394. And there's no time. I mean, stay within books, antiques, and collectibles. Tell us about your business. Doesn't matter what Eric and I are talking about or when Max joins us. If you've got a bookstore and you are looking for publicity, we want to give it to you. Okay, all you got to do is pick up the phone and dial 888-575-4394. And what I don't talk about enough, and maybe I should add this into more common talk during the show, is this show is replayed multiple times over the weekend. It's played this afternoon from 4 to 6. It's played tomorrow from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. and from 3 to 5 p.m. It's also played from 1 to 3 a.m. on Mondays. I like this.
Steve,
What did I do? Oh, boy. Go ahead, Steve.
10 a.m. tomorrow, Sports Talk with T. And at 11 o'clock tomorrow, we have Movie Talks and Chill. So your show comes on between 8 and 10 o'clock in the morning.
8 and 10. Oh, yeah, right. My bad. Wow.
Okay, no problem.
Back in the saddle. Hey, my horse threw a shoe. Okay, thanks, man. Let me give it to you the right way now. Well,
Your horse made a mess.
Yeah, I know. So did I.
Up.
So did I. And I ain't Hercules, as I'm finding out. Okay, so we are live this morning from 10 to noon. We are on replay this afternoon from 4 to 6. On Sunday, we are on from 8 to 10 a.m. and from 3 to 5 p.m. And then on Monday from 1 to 3 a.m. So that's when we're on. Where are we heard? We are heard literally all over the world, okay? When from time to time we sit down and talk about, who's listening to us where. I mean, you could take a box of, multicolored thumbtacks and just have a field day all around Europe, Australia, Russia, Germany, Italy. It goes on and on. So you never know who's coming into town. Everybody's online. If you have a shop and you're looking for new clients, new exposure, 888-575-4394. And I promise you, you won't get a bill from Madison Avenue. And on that note, let's bring in a guest who I love to introduce. I haven't done it enough yet, but I love to introduce you because of what you are, who you are, and what you've done and will do. ErikLehmkuhl, welcome back, buddy. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on. I'm going to let you do the talking here.
Sure.
For the new audience that's here, what got you started? Because the most current end of that long journey so far has been a featured guest on multiple episodes of Porn Stars. So take it away, Eric.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me again. It's an absolute pleasure. Had a great time the first show. Looking forward to this one and future ones too. So how I got started, and I tell everybody this who asks, is that anybody who has a kid, anybody who has a young boy especially, will know that all little boys go through that stage of, I like trains, I like monster trucks, and they go through I like dinosaurs and rocks phase. Most of them do. And I was that little boy back when I was a child. I went through that phase. And I never really grew out of it. Other things came and went in my life, and I went to college for other things. I studied other things. I did a lot of stuff. But at a certain point when I was just growing up, I realized, I really, really liked doing that. I liked dinosaurs. I liked minerals. I liked these stuff that could come from the earth naturally. And it also bled into a fascination and an appreciation for antiques history, ancient history, anthropology, the study of how humans came to be on the earth. It's just all so fascinating to me. And so because of that, I started collecting, and I collected little things here and there. And then I got a little more experienced, a little more savvy. I got bigger and bigger and bigger things. I invested a little more of my money, but also a little more of my time and my effort, my intelligence to try to identify what was good, what wasn't, where was the deal, where was a ripoff, and after a while, my collection grew to such a point where I thought, I don't need 10 of the same thing. Surely I could sell at least 2 of them, and keep 8. So I thought, I should probably try to sell this. And then people were buying it, and people really like it. And there's a huge market of other people who are appreciative of history, whether it be old books, like how you and I met, or through the fossil record, or through exotic stones, or any of that. So that kind of led me on my journey.
And what a journey it's been. Before we get too far away from it, I am well known for thinking out of the box, but bringing it back into the box. Let me see if I went too far out on this.
We'll see how insane you are, okay?
Yeah, okay. Well, creatively insane.
Creative.
You mentioned human history.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
I remember seeing something once on a history channel that they talked about the human bottleneck, where you had a huge population. It suddenly, then it opened again.
Yep.
What happened? Are there possessions, artifacts, antiquities that reflect those bottleneck periods of time?
Yes. And the first example, I'll break it down, like how this was first even kind of thought of, was they were actually doing a study on cheetahs, where there's zoos, and this will relate back, I promise.
Okay.
There were zoos who would try to, when they have real exotic animals or endangered species, they'll try and breed them and mate them so that they can repopulate the species. And because of that, they want to make sure they get it right. So they do a lot of genetic testing on these animals to make sure that they're compatible, that sort of thing, to produce the most viable offspring, yada, yada. They were doing a test of 2 cheetahs from 2 completely different zoos, not, associated with each other. And the genetic test came back and showed that these cheetahs were actually distant cousins of each other. And it was revealed that actually cheetahs went through a bottleneck at some point, where their population was huge and it went down as to a very, very small population. And they think it could have been in the maybe just a couple thousands of cheetahs left. And then it kind of grew back up again. And now modern, it's starting to go back down. But that's evidence of that bottleneck. And humans went through the same thing. And there's lots of theories as to why it happened. The most prevalent, I think anyway, is that it's environment, and humans were still trying to learn how best to survive, how best to make tools, how best to get food and shelter and defense. And so I think that was something that we had a learning curve, and we almost didn't figure it out. We almost got to a point where we said, we don't know how to survive, because surviving out in the woods is really hard. A lot of people listening to the show now, they're in the comfort of their cars or their homes or offices or wherever they may be. And it's when you're out in the woods with absolutely nothing, if you don't have water, if you don't have food, that's it. If you get a tiny injury, if you go and, break your ankle, you're done, that's it. So that's that we didn't really figure it. We almost didn't figure it out, but then we started to figure out, I think that was from society, like figuring out a way to live together as a community. That way we can take care of each other. So what the artifacts that can support that is, there have been human remains that have been found that show that there's a burial, that this person was buried with ceremony. They're tucked into a specific position, or they're given things to take to an afterlife, which is a whole nother idea of how we discovered an afterlife, this idea of a spiritual realm. But in any case, they were buried, and they found that these individuals were old. They made it to old age, and they had injuries to their bodies that would make it impossible for them to survive in nature, which means that they had to have been cared for decades by people around them, whether it be their children or their neighbors or something like that. They were being cared for. And where I like to think of it as, these people objectively weren't giving anything to society. And what I mean by that is they weren't going out and hunting, right? They weren't, warriors to defend them from other enemies or anything. What did they do? What was their value to these people who were taking care of them? And I think that their value was probably their life experience. I would think that they are very wise, that they remembered things of, if they're seeing somebody who's in their, in their teen years, early 20s, and they're going to go and hunt something, these people might tell them, hey, I can remember back before you were born that somebody tried the exact same thing that you're going to try and it didn't work. So you should try this instead. And that guidance, because of that community existence, that guidance, I think, is what really helped humans get beyond that bottleneck. So, and I think that's at its core. Now, that's being real specific, but that's kind of what I think happened in that situation.
And when you are reading archaeological description of an object, is the word "this was from a bottleneck period" ever appear?
Rarely, because it's reading these higher, brow documents and stuff like that can be difficult, because sometimes when they say from a bottleneck period, sometimes the bottleneck period is only applicable to one specific location or region or people.
Gotcha.
So it's like there's a bottleneck of one tribe versus the human bottleneck. Like all of us kind of were not quite there. But yes, it does come. It does come up every so often. And really, and this is something I tell people too, is people would say, well, how do you know all this? And they ask me specifically. And I say, well, really, I'm taking my best guess. And I think that everybody else, really, when you break it down, that's what they have to say, because things change all the time. Now, some of the guesses out there are really, really solid, but how can you interpret, these, really specific intentions or specific knowledge that people had, other than in modern era where there's evidence of writing or, like there's things like that. But when we're talking ancient times, it's real difficult to try to determine what was really happening. That's why that spirituality that I was talking about, when they were finding these graves that had evidence of people being buried with tools, that was super important, because tool was something that you used. You needed this tool. You couldn't just bury it. It would be the same as if you just threw away your laptop. And it's like, why would you throw away? Why would you do that? Well, the reason you're doing it is because you're not throwing it away. You're gifting it to a person for the afterlife. And that evidence of a spirituality, or that this, person who's now passed away can still somehow make use of this thing I'm going to give them, is the very beginning of spirituality, religious, all this stuff. And this stuff goes way back. Way back to the Neanderthal times. This is a very interesting thing that happens when humans started to develop mentally.
Yeah, when as you were talking, I was listening to what you were saying, and I wish I could see that program again. I just, it fascinated me when I saw it. I never even heard the term. Before that, this was probably in the last 10, 15, 20 years, not way back. This was just something I happened to channel surf into, and it just caught my eye, and it made me realize something, things that I never realized before. And then when you said this today, it's like, boom, it flashed right in front of me. Now I got to find it. Erik, looking at it, in about 25 seconds, we have to take a commercial break. So I'm going to walk us into that by saying, if you have questions for Erik, how can people reach you?
So they can reach me best at the website. That's www.professorenkodis.com. There's contact information, and email me there at eric@professorenkodis.com.
Okay, we're going to talk about spelling and CODIS after we come back from these commercial words.
Now, here's Steve the Bookman Eisenstein.
Welcome back, book lovers. I love the opening music to this show. It just kind of makes you want to dance. We are talking with ErikLehmkuhl. If you have questions for Erik on air, like right now, or to talk to us about your book business or antiques and collectibles business, all you have to do is dial, and the number is 888-575-4394. That's 888-575-4394. If you want to reach Erik, I'm going to compound the question here. If you want to reach Erik off air, Erik will start out the answer with, please slowly spell Professor and CODIS and tell us what the word means. I know I asked you that before, but sure, the Prevagen ain't working. But let me compound the question because it'll fit. And on that note, what was business like for you personally this week, Monday to Friday? What did you buy? What did you sell? What did you research? What's a day like that? But
man, well, I'm glad you brought it up, and it's been an absolute crazy time because right now I'm in the buying phase of the business. So all businesses function like this at their base core, and it is once they have a sale or a big show or something, they have an influx of cash. Well, that cash doesn't do anything for me just existing as cash. And some people take their cash and they might invest in things like gold or real estate or something else.
4K an ounce. Oh my God.
Yeah. No kidding.
Wait, let me segue. Does anyone know what silver is? Did it jump also?
It's right out 40.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Here's a point of reference for everybody. When silver is thanks, Captain Hook, thank you. When silver is at $45 an ounce, a roll of non-numismatically important quarters that are silver, you can scrap those, depending on who you're going to, between $2.15 and $2.20 a roll. A roll of 40 silver, not important numismatic quarters. Pick it up from there. Sorry, it shocked me when I saw 4K. I couldn't believe it.
I know 4,000 is absolutely ridiculous. I can remember 1,800 and 2,200, 24, 2,600,
35. I'm that old. Yeah.
I just couldn't believe it. But and actually to add to that, so this is a bit of advice for you and all the listeners and viewers out there is that if you're going to buy gold or silver, buy bars instead of coins. And the reason why is because even though that there may be coins that are determined to be bullion, there are some states, specifically Minnesota, where I'm located, is that they will count that coin as a coin and then they will tax it and they will make sure that they take that. And so if you're really trying to get the most bang for your buck, buy bars. The other risk about buying coins is that if you buy a $50 gold piece, that's an ounce of gold, as a coin, the value will be determined based upon the condition of the coin. So if you're buying it for the gold value, buy the gold bars because that no longer applies. So that's
I understand what you're saying, and numismatic gold coins, important numismatic coins, are a different world than the person that's investing in gold. My personal feeling is, why is everybody investing in gold? In case the shit hits the fan. Okay, how bad could the shit hit the fan? In the worst case scenario, I'm going to paint a picture. You got a barrel of gold and I got a barrel of rice. Who's in better shape? Yeah, exactly. I've always said that, it's stupid, but it's true. If all you have is food, what do you want gold for? Unless you get that Betty Crocker gold cake book or something from the 1930s and they teach you how to bake with gold. Pick it up from a more intelligent point where we were leaving off, where you were going to define Professor and CODIS and talk about the crazy week.
Sure. Well, first of all, so the contact information for me and personally is that we have a phone number that's 612-804-2647. That's the phone number. You can call or text that number to get a hold of me. You can also reach me at the website is professorandcodis.com. That's PROFESSOR, professor, and then in CODIS, ENCHO DUS.com.
DUSDU as in Utah S. Okay.
Correct.
.com.
Yep.
And CODIS?
Encodus is a species of extinct fish. It was, yep. So when I went on my first real paleontological dig, I was out there, and of course it's my first one. So I am excited, right? I am super pumped. I am excited. I'm energetic, and I am just picking every single rock off the ground and taking it home, even if it's just absolutely worthless. And I'm doing that because I'm just beside myself with all this energy and excitement and enthusiasm. And so I brought home everything I possibly could. And Encodus is a relatively common fossil. And so I brought home so much Encodus specimens, so many bones and just tons of teeth, that I kind of made a joke out of my own, purchases. Like, I bought a lot of Encodus. And then there were other people who were referring to my order, my shipment, my collection that I was bringing back as the Encodus order, as the Encodus package, because it's had a lot of Encodus in it. And I thought, that sounds pretty cool. I mean, it really does. It just sounds
yeah.
So I kind of thought I should call my my company, the actual business, Encodus Industries, and that was the next step. And then Professor Encodus came as a nickname. And what it was I had some people, I was overseas, and these the people who I were talking with, where English was not their first language. So they were trying to come up with a descriptor of who I was, because they didn't know my name. They didn't know how to talk in English. So they kept calling me the professor. First, I thought that was really complimentary. Like, oh, they think I'm smart. They think it's that and that. And so I walk around with my chest puffed out and all that. And then I come to realize from a friend of mine who actually did speak the language, he said, yeah, what they're trying to say is they mean professor in somebody who talks way too much.
Yeah, like the natives goofing on Margaret Mead.
Yeah. Like the professor, somebody just drones on and on and on. And I'm like, oh, great. But I thought, Professor Encodus sounded kind of cool. So I took that, and there you go, Professor Encodus.
Well, nice. Okay. So I know we both had crazy weeks, as you were saying, but I never really asked, I never really asked this question the way I'm asking it, but you have such a diverse range that it really has potential of being highly interesting. I know you said mostly you were buying this week, but so what would another week look like? What, a week where you aren't just buying, you're buying, selling, researching. How diverse do you get from day to day? And again, it's dependent on the calls you're not expecting, I gather.
Yep. Oh yeah. It is literally, I deal with everything. I mean, everything from grandma's glassware and Depression glassware, to Civil War and military stuff, and even ancient wars and the Roman Empire, to the fine art and antiquities that way, and art exhibits and sculptures. Of course, I have mineral specimens and fossils. That's kind of my specialty. But this week specifically, so I had my buying time, which is right now. So what I'll do is I'll reach out to my contacts to say, I need this item. Do you have it? Because I think it will go well. So the next show, this is important for this. So the next show that I'm selling at is at the World's Oddities Expo in Minneapolis.
Wow, that's a nice name.
Yep, the World Oddities Expo. And the Oddities Expo in Minneapolis, I encourage everybody to come because it's going to be great. But
I wish I could.
I know. Well, you fly on out. We'll get you a ticket. First class round trip, right?
It's not even just getting to the airport. That's another. No, I'm joking. I love the name of the show. I'm going to ask you more about it, but continue.
Sure. So the Oddities Expo, they have a lot of oddity things like taxidermy and things that are insect specimens, like mounted insect specimens, these kind of just oddity things, and it's a little creepy maybe to some, maybe a little alternative. It's just not your typical antique show. So I thought, I've got to get some stuff that is going to appeal to this crowd, but I also have to get some stuff that is going to set me apart from other dealers, because if I just go in with a bunch of skulls, I'm not going to stand out. And I also got to get some stuff that is that's at a margin, that if I get it, I can resell it and actually make some money on it. Because I can buy anything But if I spend too much on it, I'm not going to make a dime. So that's not the point of this. So those are the kinds of items I'm looking for. So I'm contacting people that I know that are all over the world. I'm searching auctions. All over the place, both in-person auctions in Minneapolis and online, to try to find something that I can take. And I have been buying some samurai stuff from feudal Japan. I successfully got a Japanese sword from the Muramoshi area. I'm not good at pronouncing Japanese words, but it's the 1300s, 13 to 1400s Japan. So I got a sword from the 1400s that'll be bringing to the show. We also got quite a few Egyptian artifacts this show, because whenever I get my hands on an Egyptian artifact, a real one, which is very rare, I have buyers fighting over it. I mean, they are wanting it bad because it's so hard to get. So I was able to get my hands on about a dozen or so, which is, truth be told, not that much for me as a dealer. Like, I thought that I'd get like hundreds, of certain items, but this only got a dozen or so. But it's the most I've ever had at one show. So that'll be at the World Oddities Expo as well. And so this is all that buying phase. The next phase, after I buy everything, I get it home, and then I research it to identify it, because who I bought it from, 90% of the time they have it correctly identified and whatnot. But sometimes it's mistaken, or they're right, but there's a little bit of a better way to describe it or something. So it's that research phase. I was researching different symbols of different samurai clans of feudal Japan. That's a real odd thing to study, but that's what I studied for 3-4 days. And I bought some books about it so I could read about them. And because I tend to trust the internet a little bit less than I do physical manuscripts.
Books. Yes, sir.
So that's that. And doing anything Oriental or Japanese, I found, is very hard. It's very difficult for me to pronounce. But because it's not a Latin root language, it's extremely difficult to follow the translations. Mm-hmm. And the characters. I mean, how do you search Japanese characters on my computer with my English alphabet on it? Like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. So it's very difficult to do, but I'm able to get around that. But after this research phase and this identification phase, next comes people think it might be the pricing. It's not pricing. It is the display phase, because people are not going to buy something because if their customer is going to come in and they're going to buy something, the very first thing that they're going to think of when they really consider buying it, I really want this. Where am I going to put it in my house?
Yeah. How am I going to put it in my house?
Yeah, because they're like, and if they can't answer that question, they're not going to buy it. 90% of the time, they're not going to buy it.
It's a very interesting point.
Yep. So you've got to have a display. I've got to have every item ready for in a stand or something.
Do you have an array of multiple types of boxes and stands to choose from, or do you find yourself having to custom build sometimes?
I do custom build sometimes. I will probably have to custom build so I bought some Japanese Edo period armor with a samurai clan embossing on it.
You need a dressmaker's dummy.
Exactly right. I need a form, or like a dress form, or something. I thought that I'd try to do like a wooden type of display that would mimic a traditional Japanese display. So if you think back into Japanese movies or art or whatever, you'd think of these very simple wooden posts kind of. Mm-hmm. I think that is what I want to try to build. I was just
watching Wolverine the other night, and it's in there. It's all in there. We got to hit a commercial break. We'll be back.